Reciprocal zenith angles. A phrase that sounds complicated, sounds scientific, and sounds like something only the spinning spaceball defenders could possibly understand. And this guy, one of YouTube's most dedicated spinning spaceball shills, treats reciprocal zenith angles as his holy grail.
What will you accept?
Evidence would you accept from me to prove we live on a flat plane?
I would accept measurements of long-distance reciprocal zenith angles. I would accept.
Okay.
Hold on. I'll give you a bunch.
Okay. No, I'm just asking you a
What will you
question
accept?
as a man.
What will you
I'm
accept?
asking you a question.
What will you accept? What will you accept? What will you accept is the shape of the Earth being a globe? What will you accept? Do you have the courage to state
there
this?
is no
Are
way.
you too scared? Are you too scared to state this?
I'm just going to tell you.
You're too scared to state this, aren't you?
No way.
It's because you're scared.
Will ever be able to prove to me?
I know, because you have a blind faith religious. Yeah, it's because you have a blind faith religion, and you're so scared to be confronted with it that you won't even state what you'll accept.
I've already admitted that I have blind faith.
There you go. Lying asshole. For God. Religiflurfs are the worst humans on the planet. If you can't state what you will accept, then you are a liar and you do not have an honest position. You are a liar, Jerry. You will not accept evidence. You do not have the courage to state what you would accept. Just dishonesty. All you have are lies. And where do your lies come from, Jerry? Let me say it, because you wouldn't stop over talking because you're such an asshole. I will accept reciprocal zenith angles summing to 180 degrees or less.
But what if I told you the entire reciprocal zenith angle argument collapses the moment you remember something as simple as perspective? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand reciprocal zenith angles better than every spaceball shill on YouTube. Let's start with their argument in their own words.
So basically there were 6 sets of near real-time reciprocal zenith angles, and here I tabulate those results, and basically it revealed approximately a minute on that line. So I wanted to clarify this, and I'll read this to you. The raw measurements uncorrected for deflection of the vertical are referenced to the geoid. These measurements reveal the tilt that exists between the vertical plumb directions at the ends of the lines. In other words, if this weren't the case, the vertical plumb directions would be parallel, and they would be parallel everywhere. And therefore, if you measure these zenith angles at each end of the line, they will sum to 180 degrees, but they never do. That's really true, and I encourage anybody to try this for themselves, or if anybody has found otherwise, please get a hold of me. I'd like to see your data. Because I did see some comments that, hey, I didn't take elevation into consideration. Well, those people that are making that comment are actually wrong. You're flat out wrong. The sum of the zenith angles at each end of the line, no matter what the terrain, the sum of those should equal 180 degrees if the vertical plumb directions are parallel. So basically, I created a level line. Here's the target set at milepost 27. And that target is at elevation 5930. And then I set the theodolite up at milepost 28, and I measured up 4.78 feet, which means that the telescope is at elevation 5930. So the target and the theodolite are at the same elevation. And when I set my scope to be horizontal, I looked through, and what did I see? I noticed that the horizontal crosshair is over the target. It should be on the target, right? It should be on the target, but it's over the target. Now you look at the sketch and you start to understand why do we see the crosshair over top of the target from both ends of the line. Why is that? Oops, where's the other one? Here, this one. Yeah, there's the target right there. And this is the zenith angle is set to 90 degrees. In other words, that's set horizontal. So you look at the sketch here, and that's because the horizontal plane is perpendicular to your vertical direction at this end. So you're going to have this situation, and there's your drop of the curve. And then if I extend this line out, you're going to have the same situation. Horizontal plane is perpendicular to the vertical plumb line. It can't get any plainer than that. Okay? I think that's it. There's nothing really more to say.
Quote, if the vertical plumb directions were parallel, the zenith angles at each end of the line would sum to 180 degrees, but they never do. So here's his claim in plain English. Measure the zenith angle from A to B, measure the zenith angle from B to A, add them. He says if Earth were flat, these angles would add to exactly 180 degrees. They don't. Therefore, according to him, the Earth must be curved. And this is the hill they've chosen to die on. And if you don't understand optics or perspective, this might sound scientific, but here's what he forgot, and this is a fatal omission. The entire reciprocal zenith angle argument only works if objects never shrink with distance, if angular size never changes, if perspective doesn't exist, if the atmosphere does not affect visibility, if the ground plane does not rise. No angular size reduction, no perspective convergence, no atmospheric extinction, no ground plane rise, no contrast loss, no angular resolution limit, no atmospheric layers, no perspective lowering of distant tops. He assumes a cartoon universe, not the one you live in. They assume objects stay the same apparent height at all distances. That has never happened in the history of vision. To make this undeniable, let's use a 3D modeling program. These surveyors are all identical. Copy, paste, paste. Each spread out at even increments. Now watch what happens when the camera's in a realistic perspective mode. The farther they are, the smaller they appear. Their heads drop. Their entire body compresses downward on a perfectly flat plane. This alone destroys the reciprocal zenith angles argument. And now, orthographic mode. In orthographic, nothing shrinks, nothing lowers. Everything stays the same height no matter how far away it is. This is exactly how the spaceball shills think your eyes work. Reciprocal zenith angles only prove curvature if your eyes and the world run in orthographic mode, which they don't. Watch what happens when a person walks away on flat ground. This is perspective 101. The top drops, the bottom disappears first. All of these poles are the same height. And this is what your eyes see: shrinking, dropping, converging. That's perspective, not curvature. On a flat highway, the road rises, the cars shrink, lower portions fade first. This is the 3D world being projected into our vision. Parallel shelves converge, verticals lean inward, everything funnels to one horizon point. This same geometry controls distant objects outdoors. A distant skyline compresses, bottom fades, top flattens downward. This is atmospheric extinction, light scattering, contrast loss, occlusion layers. Even giant mountains shrink, drop, flatten, and fade. People, telephone poles, cars, aisles, skylines, mountains, all obey exactly the same optical laws. And these laws produce zenith angle differences on any surface. Now that you understand real optics, let's revisit reciprocal zenith angles. They claim that if the Earth were flat, the angles must sum to 180 degrees. That only makes sense if the world has no perspective. The top of the distant object always lowers an angular elevation. This happens in your eyes, in cameras, in binoculars, in 3D software, on any flat plane. What are reciprocal zenith angles actually detecting? Perspective, atmosphere, compression, resolution limits, not curvature. But don't tell the spaceball shills. They think the whole world runs in orthographic mode, like a cartoon. They demand, flat Earth should have
parallel plumb lines.
In the SPVR model, plumb lines are simply the downward vector orientation to the VR's fall drop algorithm. Perfectly parallel, perfectly vertical, perfectly stable. But in their unverified theory of gravity, plumb lines can tilt any direction depending on local mass. Mountains, density pockets, mineral deposits, aquifers, voids, crust thickness. So they literally admit plumb lines can point anywhere, but still demand 180-degree reciprocal zenith angles on a flat plane? Their argument collapses under its own contradictions. To believe reciprocal zenith angles prove curvature, you must believe objects don't shrink with distance. Angular resolution doesn't matter. Perspective doesn't exist. Atmospheric extinction isn't real. Ground plane rise doesn't happen. Tops of objects never drop. Plumb lines only tilt for curvature. Vision works in orthographic mode. This isn't science. This isn't observation. This isn't geometry. It's fan fiction for the unified theory of gravity. Reciprocal zenith angles do not prove a spinning spaceball. They prove spaceball shills do not understand perspective. Welcome back to reality, the fixed and stationary plane.